What's going on, everyone? Vampyr Gaming here, and today we're going to be talking about what I would think is honestly one of the more popular decks here in EB01. We're going to talk about the matchups, and we're also going to show two deck lists here. But what I mean by it's going to be one of the more popular decks is just because, like, in terms of building Uda, overall, it's just cheaper. It is arguably the cheapest deck to build in EB01 because the whole deck is pretty much 4 structure decks, 4 kid, and then whatever else. We're going to talk about the builds here that I'm playing and have played. But you just pretty much have to add these 2 cards in. And adding these 2 cards, this is pretty much like $1. So if you already had Uda, it's like $1 more to just play an EB01 viable deck. So let's go ahead. We're going to dive in, take a look at the deck list, and we'll talk about the matchups and any potential changes for these lists. But we've got Uda. This is the list here that I went X1 at locals. I went 4-1. My only loss was to Uda, and that's because I didn't see Eustace, and technically that list only had 3. But you definitely want to play 4 because, again, if you play a mirror and you don't see it, like it defines your mirror. Or if you see a bunch of I'm Invincible. But yeah, we got Don X1. When attacking, once per turn, reveal the top card of your deck. If it is a film type, add it to your hand, then return it. If it's not, put it to the bottom. And so the only cards that we play that aren't film are these. So there's 8 targets. So there's a 42 out of 50 chance. So it's really strong. It's a very strong odds that you don't whiff. So it's essentially a draw 2 leader. Draw 3 if you take a life. And so you can amass an insane amount of resources and start playing Eustace. It is unfortunate when you bottom deck a Eustace, because it, of course, obviously gives your opponent information, too, that there's one less Eustace that they have to worry about. But the leaders essentially draw 2, and now we get 4 Sanji. It's a 2K, but he's also playable. I've played this to put on pressure when it was my only body, knowing that I'm going to play a Luffy next turn, and then go wide, and then he's going to swing for 8. And then we get this nice new Bluno blocker. He's just a 2-cost blocker, but it adds to our toolbox. It's searchable. And it's addable off of Uda Leader. So we get an extra blocker here just to kind of keep those going for when we're lower on life and like protecting Eustace or just playing to protect us. I was playing 2 Ezo in this build. Ezo, it's okay. It was like a nice little treat, but the best thing you're going to rest is a Rebecca, maybe a Borsellino. And honestly, backlight is just better. The body doesn't matter as much. It is a 2K, but now that we have searchable 2Ks, I never had lack of 2K in my hand. So I think in my other build, I cut this. 8-drop Eustace, best card in the deck. 4 Usopp, still really good. You want to play this with Brook. Especially if you do like a Mihawk, Brook, Usopp. Really strong for going super wide on turn 3, turn 2. And then we've got Chopper. I actually almost played this, and it almost came up. They played a 2-cost blocker, and I was like, I knew I should have played this, because then you can swing and just rest it. But I digress. Chopper, he's a 2K. Nami, best card. Best film card. It is unfortunate, though. I ended up not seeing my Namis in the early game, and I saw them all in the late game. And in the late game, I want to be playing Eustace. I want to be playing Luffy. I want to be playing and spending big. And so I had like 3 of these just chilling with no counter. And then I was like kind of forced to play these because I had no counter. And then I ended up losing. It was unfortunate. It was against Anel. But they just had it. I mean, they had like 7 life triggers. Nothing you can do about that. But it does get a little clunky in your hands. So it's very much a double-sided sword. And then, of course, Brook, you just use him to go wide. Luffy, you just use him to go wide. He's a blocker. He's an attacker. Don't underestimate attacking. If you know they can't, like, end you next turn and they probably just aren't going to swing into this, or if you know that they're probably going to try to remove this in a play versus, like, Gecko and Sokka, you 100% are swinging with this because you want to get that value. And then, of course, we got Rono, Zoro. I'm playing 3. I can see you playing 4. You can play this off of Mihawk. That did come up, but otherwise the 4-6. I've also played him off of Luffy. The 4-6 is actually kind of nice. Uda lets you restand by ditching an event, and also a blocker that you can play with Luffy and off of Brook. Mihawk, 2K. If you have 2 or less characters, you can play 1 character with the something kingdom or slash trait, which allows you to play either Zoro or Brook. At 2, I think is fine. Backlight, I could see you wanting to play 3 of this. I don't know if I'd want to play 4 just because it will get clunky. And again, you get caught with no counter. And next thing you know, you're cooked. So, yes, it's easy to get counter, but sometimes you just get really gummed up with all this no counter. But this is phenomenal because you can rest Sabo. So, black, yellow Luffy, you're resting it, going all in. Great card. Because none of the current blockers, hide behind this. And then Nugen Assist, this card is just absolutely free. You save this, play it whenever you need a card. So, you don't want to play this turn 1 because you never know what you're going to see off of, your Udas, Namis, and things like that. And then so when you know you need a combo piece, because it is technically free to activate, as long as you do it at the start of your turn or even, while you still have Dawn, you can look for that piece that you need. To keep going. So if you don't have a Brook to combo with the Luffy, you can do that. Or if you don't have the Usopp to combo with the Luffy Brook, you can look for that. Things like that. And then I'm invincible at 3. This card is essentially Eustace Leader. And this is the card that you're discarding. Absolutely phenomenal. Comes up a lot. Comes in clutch for leaders like Enel. And then let's take a look at the second version of this deck, which is here, which is updated to that 4. I'm invincible. We cut Izo. We're making sure we're playing 4 Eustace. With that extra Izo space, we're playing I'm invincible. We're playing 1 Frankie. I could see the argument to play 2 Frankie. If you can play this and it sticks, this card is just going to put so much pressure on them. And 5 is kind of a really nice spot for Sokka because they have to hard play Hina, or they have to activate stage, rest stage, leader swing, and then Hound Blaze, and things like that. So 5 is kind of a sweet spot since they're not playing Great Eruption and can't go Great Eruption, leader swing, and then use that. So it pretty much eats up 3 cards for them to answer this, assuming they don't do a Rebecca play. But yeah. Big fan. I think you can play this at 2. I only have it here at 1. And they're playing that I'm invincible. But yeah, let's go ahead and talk about the matchups. So RP Law, you want to go super wide. You can use Luffy into Brook into Nami because they can only bottom deck 1 card. The leader ability only lets them bottom deck 1 card, and they're usually not playing any kind of regular removal, and then so you can kind of eat their resources. And again, if you put them at 1 life, since they are a 4 life leader, you can backlight their queen and then just go a 9/9 and put a ton of pressure on, which is big. And if you play a Eustace, they usually they have minus, but they're probably not going to bottom deck it. It'll require 2 Gordons. It'll require a lot, and 3 Dawn, and it requires a ton of resources, and that's assuming, of course, we still probably have Luffy, Brook, things like that. These bodies are probably going to stick, and we can just answer their characters pretty easily, especially with backlight. So I think it's pretty favored on RP Law. Sokka as well, I think it's pretty solid. We want to go wide, and if any body sticks, we're in there, especially one of these larger bodies. If we continue laddering up in first turn, we're Brook into Usopp, into next turn Luffy, Brook, Usopp, and then into Eustace. One of those should stick, unless if they just open the absolute stones. These lower drops are pretty easy for them to remove and them to swing into, so you do have to be very careful and consider when to counter out of swings to ensure that you have a body, because if you just end up bodiless, you're going to be in for a not fun time. But if you get them down to 1 life, again, you can go like, I'm invincible, 9, and really just lay it on. So a lot of opportunities, and especially since they don't have 2Ks and are pretty much swinging 2K every turn, can really just put some pressure on. Since Uda can go both aggro and defensive, so it's really important to know when. I think Sokka, you do want to go aggro. And Gecko, honestly, I think is one of our worst matchups. I've been trying to play against Gecko. I put in a lot of reps, and I actually was not having a good time. The biggest thing is you need 1 body to stick, but they are a 5 life leader, and they also have Perona, which can eat your hand, and you need to be very wise on which cards you get rid of and try to figure out, what cards you might need, which cards you are going to need, because it will put you, like, you're either giving up a 2K or you're giving up something that might be useful, and you need to know which one you're giving up and how to navigate that, especially since they also have Gecko, and Gecko can swing on Eustace pretty efficiently, especially when they can remove, like, your blockers, because they play Great Eruption. They're like, Great Eruption, play Absalom, swinging 8, and they're like, an all-in with Gecko. So, you gotta be very careful when it comes to Gecko, but I think that's one of the hardest matchups we have. And then Katakuri, it's really solid because we play Eustace. We can take all of our life and then just be a thick 8K leader. That plays blockers, and because your life's gone, unless if they have a Maru and you can keep them at 2, because then if you're at 0, they can't reject to take a life to turn on a Maru, and really put us in a great spot because we play all of these blockers. And then, of course, this Luffy, they can't even Amaru this. So as long as we have this, we're really good. Same with the Nell. I think we're pretty favored because the one thing you want to do against the Nell is go wide. And this deck does that very well. And we can keep putting on pressure and answering their board. So if they go down to 1 really early, you can just spam I'm invincible and just put a ton of pressure on them. Before they even get to like their 9-Don turn to play a Yamato if they're playing that. Since I know some builds recently haven't been playing a ton. But yeah, I think this deck has a lot of solid matchups. I do think the top 2, Gecko and Sokka, are slightly troublesome just because of their level of removal. But any other matchup is, of course, very solid. Uda, of course, really comes down to Eustace. But if you don't see Eustace and you see this, you can still get through. You can still win. It really just depends on what they see, because you can get a lot of no counter in your hand, because you do play a decent amount. You play 4 Nami, you play 4 Luffy, and then you're playing 10 events. So you can have 14 cards, 18 cards total that don't have counter. And so you can find yourself in a bad spot. So it's definitely still winnable. It's just not a fun game. But yeah, as always, if you found this content of value, if you could do me a favor, hit the subscribe button. It helps me out a ton. And let me know your thoughts in the comments below on playing 9-drop Zoro. Because in terms of cards that you could play, that is one. Some argue that it is better than Eustace, because if this card sticks, you're pretty much winning the next turn. And you can, of course, this card costs 3 Dawn to swing 3 times. And then you also have I'm Invincible. So you could do 5 9s with this and 1 I'm Invincible. Let me know if you think this is worth playing over Eustace. Because, yeah, if you play this and it sticks for 1 turn, they're pretty much cooked.